In the book of Revelation, I would say is summarized in four different types of revelation that is given by John. The first revelation is actually the revelation of God, which we recognize the revelation of God in chapter 1 in Revelation. The second revelation of God is talking about the grace that he extended to the churches from chapter 2 and chapter 3. So yes, Laodicea, as bad as that church is, and was, especially during this generation, as bad and tough as it is, the Lord is still extending his grace, which is shown from chapter 2 to chapter 3. Now, the third part of Revelation, the other part, is talking about the revelation of government. The revelation of government, which will span from chapter 4 to chapter 19. So there's going to be a lot of stuff dealing with politics and the government and the world system that we're going to jump right into. That's going to be emphasized in the book of Revelation from chapter 4 to chapter 19. Now, lastly, the last part when the book concludes is going to talk about the revelation of the glory of God, which will close out chapters 20 and 21. So they are the four revelations dealing with the book of Revelation that we will find how it's breaking down. Amen. Now, I would say when we talk about the views of the church, chapter 2 and chapter 3, the section details Christ's letters to the seven churches that we can actually study at least in three different ways. And the three different ways for those letters, we'll talk about the practicality of it, the continuation, and also the prophetical. So these are like the three things that we can summarize with the letters given to the churches. Now, we have learned about all three of these views in our study so far, but I'm going to take you a little deeper, and then extend this look to really elaborate on the prophetic application of the seven churches. Now, what's practical about the application of the seven letters was that these seven letters to the churches was actually addressed to these actual churches historically based off the Christians in Asia Minor in the 1st century AD. So these was seven real letters, seven actual churches that actually received these letters from Apostle John. So that's the practical part. Some of these churches were doing the right thing. Some of these churches were doing the bad thing. They're doing the wrong thing. So this is practical. This has actually happened. What we can gain from them practically is the insight into our spiritual lives by studying their strengths and their weaknesses. So we, in essence, can take from these seven churches the good things, and then from these seven churches, the bad things, we can eliminate that. So just to let you know the practicality of it, even in relation to today, that during this time, during the time when John sent these letters out, during the Asia Minor, during the 1st century AD, Christianity was a very bright spot. It was a huge spot during the modern day. And the modern day Asia Minor is today's Turkey. The country of Turkey that we're all familiar with. And today, Turkey is a dark place spiritually, which was once bright, now is a dark place spiritually. Turkey is twice the size of Germany, and at the same time slightly smaller than the state of Texas and Louisiana combined. So Turkey is huge, double the size of Germany. That's how big Turkey is today. Now, in 2020, the population in Turkey was about 83 million people that was living there during that time. Now, the mistakes that was made by the original churches in Asia Minor with the seven churches, the mistakes that the early churches made can serve us as a warning to us today, so we cannot fall for the same situation and mess up what was put in place by not protecting the spiritual heritage that these seven churches had. And these seven churches lost their legacy because of what happened with them not doing or protecting their religion their religious prosperity or their religious strength during that time. Because again, in Asia Minor, in the early churches, they was a bright spot for Christianity. Because as of today, Turkey, original Asia Minor, where the minor churches was at in the 1st century AD, Islam is now the largest religion in Turkey. It makes up about, 99% of the population are Muslims, mostly Sunni. Christianity and Judaism and the other practices, they still have people that are practicing there now. But that population for a little bit of Christianity and a little bit of Judaism is actually decreasing and declined since the early 2000s. So the part of Christianity has withered away. The way how we in the United States cannot make the same mistakes based off of what we're learning here in Revelation, what was once a bright spot in Christianity during the 7 churches in Asia Minor, in Turkey, what Turkey is today is now in a dark place. In the United States, the United States can easily remove Christ from the picture if the churches in the United States do not do their part. So we falling exactly the same exact way. And I'm going to tell you how. Because as of today, 67% of this country identifies as being Christians, which has also had dropped over the past few decades. Now, Islam is the 2nd highest religion in the United States. And unlike Christianity, Islam is increasing while Christianity is dropping down. But this is the kicker. This is the kicker to take for the day. Unaffiliated religion, talking about, your atheists and your narcissists and anything that fall in the category of, I'm not particular, I really don't serve anything, blah, blah, blah. That population is increasing. And from the stats, the number of Americans who identify them as a non-affiliate to any religion has increased significantly from 16% from 2007, had increased up to 29% going back to 2023 and 2024. So this has an uptick of at least 13% from 2007. So where we are now, the United States of America is falling for the same thing that the Asia Minor, the 7 churches had done when they was in the 1st century, where they was dominant with Christianity, where they're their brightest spot. But now, as we know, it is Turkey, the darkest spot now spiritually, where is Islam. They are the ones, the main religion in that country. So you rarely will see any Christians if you go to that country. And the United States is trending. Y'all like trends, right? The way how the kingdom of church is, oh yeah, we trending this way. Well, they trending this way. So that's something to watch out for. Now, between the practical viewpoint and the prophetic viewpoint, in the middle is that continuous point of view, that continuous part that we're talking about. And with this point of view that's just continuous, and to explain, it means that in any time in history, there are churches which are like, I would say that there are churches that's just like the 7 churches in Revelations. Through a point in time, it can balance either or.